Hello dear friends, you are on Ruslan Belov's channel and this is the daily summary of combat operations in Ukraine. So friends, today's episode will be unusual. We will discuss not so much the advances that took place over the past 24 hours, but the prospects for the autumn campaign. And it has already started, and it will not be long, roughly 1.5 to 2 months until December. And in December, accordingly, the winter military campaign will begin. Nevertheless, I think it is important to discuss what to expect and what to count on as a result of the autumn military campaign. We will try to analyze and understand where the line of combat contact will be by December 1st. And as usual, I want to ask you sincerely to subscribe to the channel. If you are watching my videos not for the first time and are not subscribed, please subscribe. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to those who have already subscribed. Well, let us start from the north and gradually move south. Sumy region. What result should we expect from the autumn campaign? Actually, Zelensky said in August, I do not know whether you remember or not, but in mid-August, he stated that by mid-October, the Ukrainian armed forces would completely drive us out of Sumy region. But it turned out that Zelensky was wrong, and there is nothing even close to his predictions coming. He had about 1.5 weeks left, and we still have more than 200 square kilometers of Sumy region under our control. 206 to be exact. It is clear that Zelensky was proven wrong and nothing close to his forecast will happen. At the same time, let us be realistic and, most importantly, tell the truth. I expect that Ukrainian forces will continue to attack and press in Sumy region with the aim of retaking a few more settlements. And as I have already said, let us be realistic. They will likely succeed in something because for the Russian command, Sumy region has lost significance and is now, I think, somewhere around 10th place in the list of priorities. Listen, I have told you more than once on the channel that more than half of the Russian forces were withdrawn from here, 70% to be exact, and redeployed to other, more important sectors. Therefore, the Ukrainian forces will attack, and there is a chance they will retake places like Alexeyevka and Konstantinovka. That is, they will cut off a sector roughly along this line. At the same time, Russian troops will continue to press in small forces from Yunakovka in the direction of Krapovshchina. Plus, they will move towards Sadki to straighten the front along this line. Perhaps they will achieve one of these objectives, perhaps both. But that is the maximum to expect and to plan for. So, to summarize Sumy region, during the autumn military campaign, neither Russian forces nor the Ukrainian forces will achieve any serious results here. Overall, Russian troops will hold the front, advance in places, and possibly in some places retreat. But the main events will unfold, of course, far from Sumy region. Moving on to Kharkiv region. Things are much more interesting here because there are 2 cities where fights are unfolding and will continue to unfold. These are Volchansk and Kupiansk. Regarding Volchansk, prospects exist because after long attempts and efforts, Russian forces finally managed during the summer campaign to move into the southern part of the city and entrench there. I do not expect that by the end of the autumn campaign, the city will pass entirely under Russian control. It is a very difficult sector where even an advance of 100 meters is considered a major success. However, at least 30 to 40% of the southern part of Volchansk will be occupied by Russian forces, and in the winter campaign, the city will likely be pushed to completion. But the situation in Kupiansk is far more interesting. Now I will tell you in detail and analyze with you what will happen in Kupiansk over the next 2 months. Although before that, we must discuss the Malovsk bridgehead. That is the name of the sector created during the summer campaign. Here, during the autumn military campaign, Russian forces will certainly take Ambanoy, push on Otpadnoy, and I think they will straighten the front like this. That is, they will reach Dvoroshansky, connecting those fronts, plus they will clear this pocket around Bolgovka. Regarding advances to the line Katnaya, Grigorovka, Kolodesnaya, I have seen such forecasts. Personally, I am skeptical. Before Katnaya, Russian forces objectively got stuck. Russian forces only slightly advanced there. To shift the front requires additional forces, which are not available now. Well, they exist, but they will clearly not be used here. Here the front will move with its current forces without any serious reinforcements. Therefore, there will be enough strength to straighten this pocket. But objectively, there will not be enough to reach the Katnaya-Kolodesnaya line. On the Dvorichansky sector, I do not expect serious changes. Maybe they will close these pockets a bit. That is Pocket 1, Pocket 2, but no more. The main battles of the autumn military campaign in Kharkiv region will without doubt be for the city of Kupiansk. All forces will be thrown here. And you know there is a probability of taking Kupiansk by the end of the autumn campaign. Yes, it is not as rosy as some present it, but 40% of the city is already controlled by Russian fighters. Is it possible to push the remaining 60% in 2 months? Quite possible, because under Ukrainian control, there remains only one defensive stronghold in the right bank part of the city, the Yubileyny neighborhood. The rest is mostly private sector. Nevertheless, my forecast, which I gave back in the summer, was that Russian forces would take the city by the end of the year, not during the autumn campaign, but during the winter one. And I will stick to that forecast. So again, the chances that Russian forces will take it before December exist. But a more realistic assessment, in my view, is by the end of the year. What else to say about Kharkiv region? I think by December, Russian forces will also take Petropavlovka and close this northern sector. On the Borovsk sector, I do not expect much. Well, Borovskaya Andreevka will most likely come under Russian control. But do not expect a breakthrough to Borovaya yet. That sector is quite difficult. Now let us move to Donetsk region. Here, things get most interesting. On the Lyman sector, I am more than confident that during the autumn military campaign, Russian forces will reach the city from several directions. From the west, they will take the urban-type settlement Drobyshevo and reach the city. From the east, they have already pushed on Zareknoe, and what remains here? They need to advance along the road 7.5 kilometers without obstacles in the form of populated areas. Yes, there are strong points, but they are outdated. They are in open fields. Drones can simply dismantle them, and they are being dismantled. So there are no problems with reaching the city if such a task is set. From the north, Russian troops will also take Stavki and approach the city. Plus, Novosyolovka will certainly be taken, another urban-type settlement, and from there they will reach Yarova. Possibly even by the end of the autumn military campaign, we will be able to take Yarova, thus reaching the approaches to Sviatohirsk city. At the same time, I will immediately note that a full-scale assault on Lyman during the autumn campaign should not be expected. That is a prospect for the second half of the winter campaign, or even, more likely, the spring campaign. Regarding the Seversk sector, here it is even more interesting than at Lyman. Prospects are better because I am sure that during the autumn campaign, Russian forces will take Yampol and cut the Lyman-Seversk road, and from the south will reach Sviatopokrovske. In connection with this, there are even chances that by December, Russian forces will block Seversk, and by the end of the year, take it under control. Yes, it sounds incredible, but please look at the map. You see the same as I do. The front configuration here is such that this outcome is possible, since a sort of bowl has already been created and approaches from the north and south are blocked. It remains only to bring under fire control or to cut the main supply routes. On the sector between Chasiv Yar and Seversk, I do not expect much. The front stands here, and most likely until Lyman and Seversk are taken, the Russian army will remain here. In that regard, the autumn campaign will not change anything here. Well, Russian forces might take a couple of villages, like Orekhovo-Vasilievka, but no more. On the Chasiv Yar sector, movement will certainly occur, and it will progress along the Markove-Fedorivka-Belokuzminovka line. The goal is the prospect of cutting the Druzhkivka-Konstantinovka road. On the Konstantinovka sector, the tightening and squeezing of the noose around the city will continue. Expecting the start of full-scale fights and taking the city during the autumn campaign is unrealistic. This is a prospect not of the winter, but rather of the spring-summer campaign of 2026 if it happens. Although I will caveat that if it becomes possible to reach the Druzhkivka-Konstantinovka road from two sides, we might close the question with Konstantinovka during the winter campaign. On the Dobropilya sector, Russian forces will certainly break Ukrainian resistance in the Shakovo and Sofiivka area and from there move toward Druzhkivka. I do not think that by the end of the autumn campaign, Russian forces will reach Drushkivka, but reaching Torsko is quite realistic. On the Pokrovsky-Mirnohrad sector, I want to believe that in the next 2 months, the Russian army will finish off the cities. There are chances, but there is one snag. The western flank must be shifted. Whether that succeeds or not, I will not predict, because that front has practically stood still since February. If they push and Russian forces reach Hryshino, the cities will fall. If not, they will not fall. Regarding Dnipropetrovsk region, there will certainly be an advance toward Medjeva. Well, not a large-scale offensive, but movement in that direction will occur. During the autumn campaign, Russian forces will enter Dnipropetrovsk region from this sector. How far they progress is a question, but Novopidorodny will most likely be taken and possibly Raypol will be reached. But I do not think they will make it to Medjeva in 2 months. On another sector of Dnipropetrovsk region, the main battles of the autumn campaign will be for Velikomikhylivka, with a subsequent move to Pokrovska. Pokrovska will not be taken during the autumn campaign, but Velikomikhylivka I think we will take. As for Novopavlivka, no, there are no prospects there. Real, tangible prospects will only appear after the capture of Medjeva, and that is already the outlook for next year. What else about Dnipropetrovsk region? Well, as you know, Verbov was taken under control by Russian fighters on the 1st of October. That is, on the first day of October, the village was already captured. Further movement will go toward Vishnev. What can happen here during the autumn military campaign? Well, I think undoubtedly the main goal has been set, and it will most likely be achieved by the end of the autumn campaign, the cutting of the Pokrovska-Huliai-Pol highway, which will directly affect the Zaporizhzhia front, or more precisely, the Huliai-Pol sector. So we move into Zaporizhzhia region, and here the main battles will unfold precisely on this Huliai-Pol sector. Will Russian forces be able to take the city during the autumn campaign? No, they will not, although I have seen forecasts by some analysts claiming they will. But that is running far ahead of events. No, despite how effectively the fighters of the Vostok group are moving, taking Huliai-Pol within 2 months, given that the defensive line protecting the city from the east has not yet been broken, is an overly optimistic expectation. But as I said, the main supply route will be cut, and most likely, despite the Ukrainian command transferring additional forces here, I think Russian troops will manage to break through the last defensive line that runs roughly along this axis. Here lies the Uspinovka rural agglomeration, which includes 11 villages. This entire sector will be taken during the autumn campaign, after which there will be an approach to the city from the north and the east. And then, during the winter campaign, real urban fighting for the city will begin. On the Orikhiv sector, I do not expect anything significant. On the Stepnohirsk-Primorsky sector, heavy fighting will continue for these 2 months. Here, to be honest, I feel some pessimism. That is, I am not sure that within 2 months, Russian forces will be able to push through Stepnohirsk. Ukrainian forces are standing their ground to the death and constantly bringing in new reserves. So there will be fighting. Perhaps with great difficulty and slow progress, Russian forces will advance little by little, just as fighters are now gradually advancing here. But we should not expect any grand successes. In general, summing up, I do not expect too much from the autumn military campaign. However, there are chances to capture at least one city. I am talking about Kupiansk. There are also chances, in fact, to capture a second city, the city of Rodinske. I skipped over it earlier, but there are indeed chances that within the 2 months of the autumn military campaign, Rodinske will be taken. And then there will be real chances to capture Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad as well. At the beginning of December, we will sum up the results and compare how our expectations matched reality. And who knows, maybe reality will turn out even better than expected. Who knows, that can also happen. Overall, that is all I have today regarding the situation on the front. Now let us look at what is happening on the political agenda. Orbán stated that the European Union has no money left to finance the war in Ukraine. We have already spent between 175 and 180 billion euros, and every year we will have to keep spending 40, 50, 60 billion more. We simply do not have this money. This strategy has neither a rational basis nor a financial one. We are not capable of financing this war and at the same time hoping to defeat such an opponent, and still continue to exist with the same money and economic power. It is an illusion, and it will collapse. The consequences will be serious. Orban's statement sounds particularly sharp against the background of EU political declarations about, quote, long-term support for Ukraine until victory. His words reflect not just the Hungarian position. They are a symptom of exhaustion within the entire European Union. More and more often in European capitals, questions are being raised about the expediency of such spending, especially when the socio-economic problems inside the EU are only getting worse. Trump is freezing funding for democratic states, Reuters reports. $26 billion of funding for democratic states has been frozen by the administration of US President Donald Trump amid the government shutdown. The frozen programs include $18 billion for transport projects in New York and $8 billion for green energy projects across 16 Democrat-governed states, including California and Illinois. The US president is following through on his threat, using the shutdown, for which he blames the Democrats, to punish his political opponents. According to well-known American financier Ray Dalio, the United States is on the brink of a civil war.